Have you ever wondered why certain men seem unable to release the image of a woman long after she has walked away, why her silence echoes louder in his mind than her words ever did, why her absence burns more fiercely than her presence? The answer does not lie in shallow games or trivial tactics, but in a deep psychological truth, a truth that Carl Jung's work unveils within the labyrinth of the unconscious. The eternal chase is born not from her pursuit of him, but from the unresolved shadows he projects onto her. The moment a woman ceases to revolve around the orbit of a man's ego, something paradoxical awakens in him. What he thought was secure becomes fragile. What he assumed belonged to him slips beyond his grasp. This shift touches an ancient wound, the masculine fear of losing control, of watching the feminine slip into the unknown. For the feminine is not meant to be possessed, she is archetypal mystery itself, unpredictable, elusive, a force that calls him into his own depths. The more she withdraws into her autonomy, the more his psyche begins to spin the trap, but it is a trap of his own making. Jung wrote of the anima, the inner feminine figure within a man's psyche. She is his muse, his tormentor, his mirror. When he meets a woman who awakens this figure, she is no longer just herself, she becomes a screen for his unconscious longings, wounds, and illusions. And so, when she steps back, when she refuses to collapse into his demands, he is left with his own anima, the phantom of her living inside him. He cannot simply move on, because it is not her physical body he chases, but the reflection of his own unintegrated soul. You see, a man may believe he is chasing a woman, but in truth, he is chasing the fragments of himself that she illuminated. That is why some men will obsess, will linger, will return again and again, even when she has withdrawn completely. It is not her power over him that binds him, it is his inability to claim his own inner feminine. This is the psychological trap. He is haunted by the very silence, distance, and mystery she embodies, for they awaken the anima that he does not know how to integrate. And what about you? When you step back, when you resist the urge to explain, to fix, to soothe his disquiet, you allow the unconscious to work upon him. You become the mirror, but you no longer stand in front of him. He looks into empty space and still sees your image. He feels your absence, and in that absence, he is forced to confront the hollowness of his projections. This is the beginning of his pursuit, not because you lured him, but because you refused to collapse into his need. Men often confuse control with love, possession with intimacy. But true intimacy cannot grow where the ego rules. When a woman breaks free from his expectation, she destabilizes the ego's false certainty. Suddenly, he must face a question he does not want to ask: who am I, without her compliance? What is my worth, if she does not revolve around me? The silence you create is not an act of cruelty, it is the fire that burns through his illusions. It is in that fire where the chase begins. Jung reminds us that the unconscious seeks wholeness. And so, a man feels compelled to run after the image he has lost, because it represents his own missing pieces. But here lies the paradox: the more desperately he chases, the further away the woman becomes, for she is no longer playing the role of his mirror. She is becoming herself. And the more she becomes herself, the more she awakens his longing, for the man senses, even dimly, that it is not her he must catch, but the fractured soul within him. This dynamic is not about manipulation. It is about liberation. When you understand the trap, you no longer need to perform or pretend. You do not need to craft artificial mystery, because your authentic boundaries, your refusal to be consumed by his projections, are mystery enough. Your silence is not emptiness, it is the fullness of a woman who knows her worth. And in that worth, you awaken the restless, eternal chase, not because you cling, but because you let go. So consider this: when you step into your independence, when you no longer barter your essence for his fleeting attention, you become more powerful than you realize. His pursuit may look like obsession, but beneath it lies a deeper truth, the unconscious demanding integration, the anima crying out to be known. He runs after you, but what he really seeks is himself. When a man is caught in this psychological trap, the chase becomes less about you as a woman and more about the restless dialogue within his own psyche. He finds himself haunted by questions that he cannot answer. Why does your silence disturb him more than your words? Why does your distance pull him closer instead of pushing him away? These questions press into the very fabric of his identity, and this is where Jung's insights become piercingly clear. A man projects his unlived life onto the women he desires. When you retreat into yourself, when you choose solitude over submission, you ignite that projection in its purest form. You are no longer giving him the reassurance of presence, and so his unconscious begins to magnify your absence. Suddenly, every image of you, every memory, every fleeting interaction grows larger in his mind, colored by the longing of what he cannot control. He believes he is chasing you, but in truth, he is chasing the parts of himself that you stirred awake. This is why he cannot let go, because letting go of you feels like losing a fragment of his own soul. Think of how desire works when it collides with mystery. The known can be dismissed, but the unknown lingers. A woman who refuses to explain herself, who does not yield her inner world to a man's demand for clarity, becomes a mystery he cannot solve. And human nature, particularly the male ego, abhors the unsolved. His mind circles back to you, replaying moments, searching for hidden meanings, filling the silence with stories of what you might be thinking or feeling. You are not doing anything, yet in his psyche, you are everywhere. Here lies a paradox: the less you give, the more he imagines. The less you explain, the more he analyzes. The less you offer, the more value he assigns to what little he had. This is not manipulation, but psychology. It is the alchemy of absence turning into gold within his unconscious. The scarcity of your attention becomes a treasure, and the chase becomes eternal because he is no longer chasing you in reality, he is chasing the idealized figure his unconscious has constructed out of you. Jung warned that projection, if unrecognized, enslaves the psyche. A man trapped in projection will believe his feelings toward you are about who you are, when in reality, they are about what he has not yet faced in himself. Your distance exposes this trap. Your silence becomes the stage upon which his inner drama plays out. He longs, he obsesses, he reaches, and still, you remain untouchable. But what about you? For you, the challenge is not to fall back into the trap of meeting his need. Too many women, sensing the chase, mistake it for proof of love. They believe his desperation equals depth. But depth is not measured in pursuit, it is measured in presence. A man running after a projection is not capable of true presence. He is lost in the mirage of his unconscious. If you surrender to his chase, you may find yourself reduced again to his mirror, his phantom anima, rather than your living, breathing self. And so the power lies in your detachment. The more you hold to your own inner center, the more the trap works itself upon him. His chase is endless because he cannot reclaim from you what he never owned, his own missing wholeness. You become a catalyst, not by playing a role, but by refusing to play one. That is why your quiet strength unsettles him. That is why your refusal to explain shakes him to his core. You are not part of his unconscious drama anymore, and yet, you are the figure he cannot escape. The Stoics knew this truth in another form. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul is dyed by the color of its thoughts. A man who obsesses over what he cannot control stains his own soul with longing. He suffers not because you caused him pain, but because his mind cannot release the image it has painted of you. His suffering is self-inflicted, born from attachment to illusion. And so he chases, hoping that if he can catch you, he will catch relief. But relief never comes, for the chase is not of you, it is of the unconscious within him. This is why the woman who stands firm, who embodies her independence without apology, becomes unforgettable. Not because she clings, not because she tries to please, but because she withdraws into her authentic mystery. She forces the man to face his projections, and he will chase until he either integrates his shadow or remains forever restless. The deeper the chase becomes, the more the man discovers that what he is after is not simply your presence, but the archetypal feminine itself, the anima that lives in his unconscious. Jung described this figure as both muse and destroyer, the inner goddess that can inspire him to greatness or plunge him into despair. When a woman embodies her own independence and refuses to be consumed by his need, she awakens this figure with unrelenting intensity. He begins to see her not only as a woman, but as mystery, destiny, temptation, even salvation. In reality, she is none of these things. But in his psyche, she becomes everything. It is here that the psychological trap tightens. A man can walk away from a body, but he cannot walk away from an image that has rooted itself in his unconscious. And so, though you may have withdrawn, though you may have chosen silence, he still feels bound to you, as though an invisible thread tethers him to your absence. The more he tries to sever it, the tighter it coils. He mistakes this bondage for love, when in truth, it is projection. He is not bound to you, he is bound to the shadow of himself that you have awakened. For the woman, this knowledge is both a warning and a liberation. A warning, because it reveals how easily a man can confuse obsession with devotion. Liberation, because it reminds her that she does not need to perform or chase to be unforgettable. The power lies not in pursuit, but in presence, and in withdrawal. It is the paradox of detachment. When you no longer fight for his attention, when you no longer explain your worth, you become more magnetic than when you were pleading to be seen. Consider how this plays out in his mind. Each time you do not respond, his imagination does. Each silence becomes a canvas for his projections. Each boundary becomes a challenge to his ego. Each withdrawal awakens the restless archetypal hunger within him. He may chase you with words, with gestures, even with promises of transformation, but none of these are about you. They are about his desperate attempt to capture the anima, to bind the elusive feminine that he feels slipping beyond his control. And yet, here is the bitter irony, the more he chases, the more he loses. For no man can catch the anima in another. He must turn inward and integrate her within himself. Until he does, his chase will remain endless, circling the same illusions, grasping at phantoms. You, in your autonomy, stand as a mirror of this truth. Your very refusal to be consumed by his need exposes his unfinished work. He may resent you for it, he may desire you all the more for it, but he cannot forget you. For you, the lesson is profound. Your silence is not emptiness, it is wisdom. Your distance is not coldness, it is self-respect. Your refusal to collapse into his chase is not cruelty, it is clarity. By standing firm in your authenticity, you force him into confrontation with himself. This is why the woman who knows her value never truly loses power. Whether he learns from the chase or not, she remains untouched, sovereign in her own center. The Stoics spoke of this sovereignty in different words. Seneca wrote that the wise person is self-sufficient, needing nothing from the outside to feel whole. This is what unsettles men most, a woman who no longer looks to them for completion. She has integrated her own inner masculine, her own strength, and so she does not bend under the weight of their projections. She does not wait for their validation to breathe. And in her very independence, she triggers the deepest longing in them, for the wholeness they cannot yet find within themselves. So he will chase. He will chase until exhaustion, until realization, or until eternity. He will chase not because you demanded it, but because your very being reminded him of what he lacks. And you, by stepping out of the trap, by refusing to be consumed by his projections, reveal the timeless truth: the eternal chase is not about you at all, it is about him. As the chase lingers on, a subtle transformation begins to unfold inside him. At first, his pursuit is frantic, fueled by ego, desire, and the refusal to accept defeat. He frames it as a conquest, a battle to reclaim what he believes slipped from his grasp. Yet with every unanswered call, every silence that greets his longing, the energy of the chase changes shape. The woman becomes not merely a lost lover or a missed opportunity, but a symbol of something larger, the part of his soul that has remained foreign to him. Jung described this moment as a confrontation with the shadow and the anima together. For in the image of the woman he cannot possess, a man meets both the beauty of what he longs for and the terror of what he has denied within himself. Her absence illuminates his lack of integration. Her silence forces him into dialogue with his own inner void. In chasing her, he is running from the loneliness inside himself, but the further he runs, the closer he comes to recognizing that the emptiness was always his own. For many men, this realization never fully blooms. They remain trapped in the cycle, forever pursuing one woman after another, believing that the next conquest will deliver peace, that the next embrace will resolve the ache. But no embrace can soothe what lies unresolved in the psyche. And so they chase endlessly, haunted by the mystery of the woman who once refused to give herself away, for she embodies the truth that no external possession can heal the fractured soul. For the woman, this is where empowerment deepens. She begins to see that she was never the source of his obsession, she was only the spark that lit the fire. His chase is not her burden. It is his unfinished work. And so she learns the art of detachment, the freedom that comes from knowing she does not need to yield to his longing in order to validate her worth. She understands that his obsession is not a crown, but a chain, one she is not required to carry. This detachment does not mean she is cold or unfeeling. On the contrary, it means she is deeply rooted in her own essence. She has turned inward, embraced her own shadow, integrated her own inner masculine, and so she no longer seeks completion through his chase. She is whole, and therefore free. This freedom terrifies him, because it is the very freedom he has not yet claimed. Marcus Aurelius warned against becoming the slave of external desires, reminding us that freedom is found in self-rule. The woman who knows herself embodies this philosophy without words. She does not argue, she does not plead, she does not prove. She simply is, unshaken, self-contained, sovereign. And in her sovereignty, she awakens the deepest longing in him, not because she withholds affection, but because she reveals a kind of strength he has not yet touched within himself. This is the essence of the psychological trap. His unconscious convinces him that chasing her will restore balance, yet every step of that chase only reflects him back to himself. He feels pulled toward her, yet what he is really pulled toward is the wholeness she symbolizes. She does not need to move, to speak, to persuade. Her very stillness exerts more power than all his efforts combined. And so, in the great paradox of attraction, the one who does not chase becomes the one eternally pursued. The woman who resists the urge to collapse into his demands becomes unforgettable, because she breaks the cycle of ego and reveals the deeper hunger beneath it. She awakens his anima, his shadow, his unclaimed pieces, and those cannot be ignored. He may try to forget her, to bury her memory under new distractions, but the psyche does not forget what has been awakened. It lingers, it whispers, it haunts. For you, this truth is liberation. You need not perform, you need not manipulate, you need not entrap. All you need is to stand firm in your being, to resist the urge to lose yourself in his story. For it is not your story, it is his. And the chase, no matter how eternal it feels, belongs to him, not to you. And yet, there comes a point in this endless chase where the man begins to sense that he is not running after you, but running from himself. The thrill fades, the strategies collapse, and the hunger that once felt intoxicating turns into an ache he cannot soothe. This is where Jung's insight cuts to the bone, projection eventually crumbles under the weight of reality. The anima he thought he saw in you must return to him. Either he faces her within or he remains condemned to repeat the cycle with another. For the man who refuses to integrate, the chase becomes a prison. He circles endlessly, grasping at the shadow of the feminine that he cannot hold. He may convince himself that it is you who keeps him restless, but the truth is far deeper, it is his own soul crying out for recognition. You, in your autonomy, have merely awakened what was already there. He cannot release you because he has not released himself. But for the rare man willing to confront his shadow, the chase can become a turning point. If he is willing to stop running and look inward, he will discover that what he longs for in you is the very thing he has denied in himself. The tenderness, the intuition, the capacity to feel, all these feminine qualities live within him as anima, waiting to be embraced. And once he claims them, the desperate pursuit dissolves. He no longer needs to chase you, because he has found himself. For the woman, this revelation brings a different kind of peace. She sees now that she was never the prize, never the object to be won. She was the mirror. She was the spark. But she was never responsible for the fire that burned within him. His obsession was not proof of her value, but evidence of his fragmentation. And once she sees this, she is free, free from the weight of his longing, free from the illusion that his chase validates her worth. This freedom is not bitter, but radiant. She can love without chains, give without losing herself, walk away without guilt. She is no longer the captive of his projections. Instead, she is sovereign, rooted in her own wholeness. The man may continue to chase, but his chase no longer defines her. She is no longer caught in the trap, because she understands that the trap was never hers to begin with. Epictetus once wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." These words reveal the final truth of the chase. The man who does not integrate will remain enslaved, forever chasing phantoms in the shape of women who refuse to collapse for him. The man who turns inward will find liberation, not in possession, but in wholeness. And the woman who knows her worth will never be ensnared by either. She will walk her own path, sovereign and serene, untouched by the turmoil of his restless pursuit. This is the culmination of the psychological trap. It was never about tricks or games, but about the deepest laws of the psyche. A man who cannot face himself will chase forever. A woman who knows herself will never need to chase. And so the story ends where empowerment begins. For the woman who stands in her own truth, who embraces her mystery without apology, who refuses to barter her essence for validation, becomes untouchable in the most powerful sense. She is remembered, desired, chaste, yet free. Because she knows the secret that Carl Jung and the Stoics alike revealed: fulfillment does not come from being possessed or pursued, but from being whole within oneself.